This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. I really thought we'd keep the busy news days in 2020 or at least wait a few weeks, but whatever. Here are some of the many things we've got for y'all. Senate runoff races. Sound familiar? We'll tell you what's at stake aside from who will represent Georgia in the Senate. And as a bonus, we'll tell you about the history of runoffs in the state and how they're rooted in restricting the influence of black voters. But first, here's what you need to know right now.
It is my decision now that I announce today before you that no Kenosha law enforcement officer in this case will be charged with any criminal offense based on the facts and the laws as I will describe them to you now.
Kenosha's district attorney announced today that his office would not be filing charges against the white police officer who shot Jacob Blake, a black man, in the back 7 times last year. Police were responding to a call about a domestic incident in Kenosha back in August. The video captured what happened next. As Blake walked to the driver's side of a car, he was shot in the back 7 times by Rustin Shesky, a responding officer. Blake survived the shooting but is now paralyzed from the waist down. Ahead of the announcement, the city approved an emergency declaration mobilizing more than 500 National Guard members in the city. That declaration, in preparation for unrest tonight, is set to last 8 days.
This is a big election. This is going to help to determine whether the new president gets his agenda across or not.
We choose the people that we put in office, and we have a responsibility. So if we put the wrong person in a sense, it falls on us. So if I don't vote, I'm neglecting my responsibility.
We only get so many opportunities to participate in our democracy, so you have to take them when you get them.
Georgians have cast their votes in a pair of hugely important Senate races. Results are trickling in tonight and expected to come down to the wire. With rural areas reporting first, Republicans are expected to take the early lead, just like on election night in November, remember? Cities with a lot more votes coming in, which lean more toward Democrats, historically take longer to count. More than 3 million people chose to vote early in this election. That number already surpasses the total number of votes in Georgia's last runoff election in 2008. Our national reporters have been asking voters in Georgia what's driving their vote. Here's what we've heard.
Biggest issue is healthcare. I'm a former healthcare executive, and I've seen it on the front lines and see it now.
Well, I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to protect myself from these mobs, this burning, looting, and murdering. And I'm not going to give up my gun.
Somebody was okay with keeping 500 kids away from their families without any way of them getting back to them. And there were people in my state that supported him doing it. So I'm making sure that that doesn't happen again.
I just want somebody who's going to be thoughtful in the Senate and not be an obstructionist.
My message to everybody is this is not only going to come for somebody that you love, this is going to possibly come for you. And so everything we do is either life-saving or life-taking at this point.
COVID is out of control right now across the US, and especially in Los Angeles, where ICUs have had 0% capacity for weeks now. Ambulances are being told not to transport trauma patients if little to no chance of survival. Hospitals have been forced to set up cots in parking lots to take patients in. Meanwhile, surges across the nation are spreading supplies and health workers thin. Just take a look at this graph from the COVID Tracking Project. It shows daily cases and deaths over the last month. At no point do either of those lines dip below 2,000 daily deaths or 150,000 daily cases for a whole month. The mayor of New York City wants to ban all travel from the United Kingdom. It comes after the more contagious variant of COVID-19 was discovered in NYC. The UK variant has already popped up in several US states. That leads health experts to believe it's already circulating in the country. Remember, this strain is not more lethal, but it does spread faster. Experts say COVID-19 vaccines are still effective against this variant. We aren't trying to freak you out. This variation is typical behavior for a virus. It just goes to show, even with the rollout of vaccines in the new year, don't stop your personal protective measures. We are still fully in this pandemic. There's a lot at stake in Georgia in the Senate runoff races, and the implications will affect not just who represents the Peach State in the upper chamber, but also the Biden administration's agenda. Newsy's Stephanie Liebergen explains.
Control of the Senate all comes down to the 2 runoff contests in Georgia on Tuesday, bringing in some big hitters from both parties.
Changing the balance in the United States Senate which is what this election will do, will make all the difference.
And we're going to keep fighting to hold the line in the United States Senate.
Excluding the 2 seats up for grabs in Georgia, the current party split in the upper chamber looks like this: 50 Republicans and 46 Democrats, plus the 2 independents who caucus with them. If GOP Senators David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler both win on Tuesday, Republicans will have a 52-48 majority, with Senator Mitch McConnell remaining as majority leader. If both the Democrats win, Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff, then the Senate will be split 50-50. With President Trump still in the White House, that makes Vice President Mike Pence the tiebreaker, and the Republicans would keep the majority until January 20th. Once President-elect Joe Biden is sworn in, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris takes over that tiebreaker role, which would give the Democrats the majority for the first time since 2015. If the seats split 1-1, then Republicans will keep control with just a 1-vote margin over the Democrats. Stephanie Liebergen, Newsy, Miami.
In case you're wondering, my party affiliation is Waffle House, and this show is for everyone, no matter how scattered, covered, smothered, and or chunked you get your hash browns.
We take a step away from the noise and spin to really hear the stories that need to be told. Newsy cuts through.
If you're looking for a theme, don't. Twitter's trending topics are a ball of chaos that we're throwing at you, which sounds worse than it actually is. Here's what's trending. Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, was arrested entering DC Monday night on a warrant charging him with burning a Black Lives Matter banner. That banner was taken last month from one of the oldest historically black churches in DC. Tarrio was originally charged with 1 misdemeanor count of destruction of property for the banner, but he's now charged with 2 felony counts of possession of 2 high-capacity magazines, which were found during his arrest. This all comes ahead of the Proud Boys' plan to rally for President Trump this week while Congress meets to finalize election results. According to Tarrio, the far-right group will turn out in record numbers tomorrow, but are planning to ditch their typical black and yellow uniforms to blend in with other demonstrators. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser mobilized the National Guard ahead of protests and warned Washingtonians to stay out of the downtown area Tuesday and Wednesday. What's worse than getting a smaller stimulus check? Not knowing when you're gonna get it. The IRS is trending because of holdups with stimulus check deliveries, and it could come down to how you filed your taxes. If you used an online provider like H&R Block for your taxes and opted to get your refund on a debit card, the IRS could be loading it up there with a different account number. Or it could be delayed because you opted to pay for the service using your refund. Now, to be clear, the checks are rolling out. Most people should get them the same way they got the first and larger stimulus check, and they should arrive by January 15th, which is the cutoff date for the IRS and the Treasury. If you want to check the status of your first and second stimulus checks, you can use the IRS Get My Payment tool at irs.gov, and you don't have to ask nicely, so there's that. All right, y'all are finally getting me to talk about The Bachelor. The 25th season of the show premiered last night, and this season is historic for a few reasons. First, if you're a fan of the show, you know that The Bachelor is normally chosen from previous contestants on The Bachelorette. I'm told Pilot Pete, whoever that is a good example of this. But current Bachelor Matt James never made it onto The Bachelorette before being chosen as the lead on The Bachelor. Possibly because of the pandemic or because the show wanted to get a little more diverse. So that leads us to the biggie. James is the series' first black lead since the show's start in 2002. Something fans have been waiting for, especially after last year's reckoning over racial injustice. The Bachelor franchise has been criticized for years for its lack of diversity. Back in 2012, 2 black men who auditioned for the series filed a racial discrimination class action lawsuit. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed. Here's another little tidbit. Contestant Abigail Herringer is also making history as the first hearing-impaired contestant on the show. Word on the street is she's the front runner for the season, but don't expect updates every week. I'm not invested like that. Yet. Georgia's runoff races will effectively put a bow on this election season and decide which major party will control the Senate. That much I'm sure you already knew, but the idea to hold a runoff if neither candidate received more than 50% of the vote is rooted in Georgia's racist political history. Newsy's Catherine Beek explains that runoffs were created as a way to restrict the influence of black voters in Georgia.
Millions of people across Georgia are lining up to cast their votes in 2 state runoff elections that will determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. The reason these runoffs are even happening goes back to the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement. For decades, the state of Georgia used a county unit system to determine the winner of its primary elections. The system, which allotted votes by county population, allowed counties with fewer residents to hold a majority of the unit votes. This restricted black political influence by heavily favoring predominantly white rural communities. But in 1963, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected the county unit system, saying it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. That one person, one vote ruling forced Georgia's white politicians to come up with a new way of voting. Some feared a plurality system would make it much easier for a black candidate to win. They thought the state's black population would vote as a single block for that candidate and deliver a victory, while white voters would be split amongst other candidates. State Representative Denmark Groover, who would later describe himself as racially prejudiced, came up with a proposal requiring an elections winner to receive over 50% of the vote. That proposal has been the law for more than 50 years, and it's the reason voters are heading to the polls again. Groover presented his runoff option as a way to prevent the Negro bloc vote from controlling the elections. He believed that even if a black candidate made it to a second round of voting under runoff rules, white voters would band together, ensuring a white candidate won the race. The Justice Department unsuccessfully challenged Georgia's majority vote requirement in 1990, arguing the practice had a, quote, demonstrably chilling effect on the ability of blacks to become candidates for public office. While Thurbert Baker became the first black man to serve as Georgia's Attorney General in 1997, Georgia voters have yet to elect a black candidate to other senior positions, including governor, lieutenant governor, and U.S. senator. For Newsy, I'm Catherine Beek.
We're making progress in the fight against COVID, but variants of the disease are complicating things for residents in the UK. The global vaccine rollout has been a promising development in this pandemic, but things are still bad, as evidenced by another lockdown in the UK. Prime Minister Boris Johnson reimposed restrictions Monday to stem the spread of a new, more transmissible variant of COVID-19. Here's a look at how the public and health experts reacted to the news.
As another lockdown begins, the UK is a country still trying to come to terms with the new variant of COVID-19. Up to 70% more transmissible.
As I speak to you tonight, our hospitals are under more pressure from COVID than at any time since the start of the pandemic.
Just weeks ago, vaccine approval injected much-needed hope at the end of a most challenging year. Case numbers were down, Christmas brought eased measures. But now families across the nation are again grappling with how to manage this latest government U-turn, having to homeschool children after just one day of the school term.
My initial feeling was a bit of shock at the announcement last night, and mainly to do with the amount of time.
A sentiment echoed by many Brits.
You're thinking, okay, there will be school on Monday and then there won't be school. It's just too much conflicting information.
They acted slow the first time, putting us in the first lockdown. They've not learnt any lessons and acted slow again, so disappointed.
It's like, well, what are we doing? Make up your mind. Let's figure this out and do it once and for all and do it well instead of in and out of lockdown all the time. It's very hard.
New figures put the UK on course to exceed 100,000 COVID-related deaths before the end of the month. Boris Johnson's message seems sensible. Stay at home.
But there have been criticisms of the government. That's because this national lockdown was not announced before Christmas. Over the last 2 weeks, on London hospital wards, the number of people being treated for COVID-19 has increased by 68%, which has led many to suggest the government should have acted sooner.
Could have acted more quickly.
Dr. Ben Marithapu is an expert in social care and has been supporting elderly patients throughout the pandemic.
We have been on the back foot, and there have been repeated U-turns. That causes confusion, it causes concern. It also means that COVID-19 has had potentially more opportunity to spread than if we had got a handle on it earlier on in the process and earlier on in this spike, which is now really out of control.
The government hopes to vaccinate 12 million of the most vulnerable in society by mid-February, with Boris Johnson, perhaps wishfully, referring to this lockdown period as the last phase of the struggle. I'm Luke Hanrahan for Newsy in London.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Same flavor there, just less of this. Americans have a lot of questions as the second round of stimulus checks roll out. When am I getting mine is one we covered a bit earlier, but also we're in debt. Where's that money coming from? National reporter Stephanie Stone spoke to a financial expert who might not have all the answers, but can definitely give you a better understanding of some of the more common queries.
There's been so much political back and forth surrounding the next round of payments. First off, how much will we get? The answer, for most people, $600 per person in the house.
I think the issue that most people don't seem to be realizing is that your eligibility for this is based on your 2019 tax return. That was a long time ago.
Wendy Barlin is a CPA and the woman behind the LA-based business About Profit.
We help small business owners keep more of their hard-earned money with tax strategies.
Her clients, like the rest of us, have a lot of questions about that stimulus money. For a lot of people, $600 isn't nearly enough for the amount of help needed.
Absolutely. If you are underwater and you haven't worked in a year, $600 is not going to help you. You need food, you need rental assistance.
But if you've got that covered and you've been fortunate to work during the pandemic, that money is, of course, nice.
There are a lot of people where $600 is extra for them. They are still working. And so for them, $600 is going to be extra, and that's going to be pretty great. Savings, credit card debt, charitable help, especially at this time of the year. So I think it's a really broad spectrum of how people are going to benefit from this stimulus.
She recommends paying down debt, among other things.
Always food, housing, medical first. Once those are covered, then given the climate, I think we have one of two really good choices. One, spend the money with small businesses who need you. Do something nice for yourself and your family and the businesses that need you, or give some of it to those who truly need it, especially because charitable donations are tax deductible.
Where does that money come from? America faces a mounting debt, and many wonder if the extra cash comes with a hidden clause. The short answer, you don't have to pay it back, and it's not taxable.
If you didn't get it and you are entitled to it, as soon as you file your tax return, you will get it. It is not taxable and you do not need to pay it back. However, unemployment money, that's different. Unemployment money is, in fact, taxable.
She says as soon as you file your 2020 return, you'll get the money if you haven't already. Barlin says you may want to watch your mailbox. Sometimes the IRS will send a debit card that could look like junk mail.
Be prepared for the unexpected. The next few months are going to be a roller coaster. I think there's this optimism that once January 1st comes, a light bulb's going to go on and everything's going to be better. And I'm an optimist, so I certainly hope that's true. But I also believe that we need to continue to take care of our money, take care of our health, and make plans for the new world that we're living in and not be waiting for some magic fix to happen.
No one has a crystal ball into our 2021, but Barlin says take the opportunity to make a positive financial or career change in your life if you're able. I'm Stephanie Stone, reporting.
Okay, we've got a bad news, good news situation here. The bad news is something we've covered before. Hundreds of music venues have closed across the country since March of last year because of the pandemic. The good news, relief for small venues is on the way. National reporter Chris Conti tells us more about how billions of dollars in relief could help bring back live music at some point this year.
More and more venues have gone under.
There is something unsettling about the silence. Silence, which consumes stages and theaters across the country.
It's been absolutely heartbreaking, but they just couldn't hold on any longer.
Silence that motivated Audrey Fix-Schaefer to speak up in whatever way she could.
Our workers can't work. We would love to have them back, but we're shuttered.
Audrey is with the National Independent Venue Association, a group which didn't exist before the pandemic. But as COVID forced the closure of thousands of music venues across the country, this nonprofit began lobbying Congress hard for help. And they got it in the form of $15 billion in stimulus aid.
The reason why this got so much bipartisan support, which we know is a rarity nowadays, is that because these small businesses are not just music places or comedy spots, but they are the economic engines of the local communities.
12 million across the country have jobs tied to live events. And for every dollar spent on a ticket at small venues, a total of $12 in economic activity is generated within communities on things like restaurants, hotels, taxis, and retail establishments.
It was, pretty obvious that if we went dark forever, so would so many of the other businesses around them.
From back rent to mortgages to utility bills, the money will be distributed by the Small Business Administration. Music to the ears of some venues, while hundreds of others, though, have already closed for good.
This money will enable venue operators to do is to hold on. Already hundreds have gone under and will never come back again. Once these places shutter forever, that's it.
But for now, there is some hope on the horizon for this country's shuttered stages as they wait for the music to play once again.
Now that independent venues and promoters are going to have a lifeline to be able to hold on until it's going to be safe to reopen fully.
I'm Chris Conti.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back with more in the Loop tomorrow, same time, same place. More top stories are headed your way right now.